we've seen a major shift in that, where we don't see a lot of men going into the veterinary field anymore. There are still some, but it's very much female dominated. So I think the same is true for ag. When we're seeing more women as professionals in these industries, it's going to encourage future generations.
All right, welcome to the Feed Science Podcast, brought to you by Ethics. I'm Carlos Campabadal. I'm dedicated to bringing you the latest insights and discussions in the feed science from the feed science industry. So please get ready to expand your knowledge and stay ahead with today's episode. So today we have Dr. Marisa Cohen. She is specialized agent for animal and food safety at the prestigious Department of Poultry Science at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. And today we're going to be talking a very interesting topic, kind of commemorating the International Women's Month that was this past March. So we're going to focus on the work-life balance and also on the increasing role of women in the feed industry, and of course, everything related on it, like poultry science, agriculture, everything how women has increase that role overall in the industry and of course in the academic world. So Marisa, thank you very much for joining us. We're very happy to have you. As I understand, this is your second podcast with us and first time for me being a host, and this is great. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So to start off, if you could just kind of, which is always very interesting to me, I want to ask you, how do you pretty much end up in this role? You know, can you tell us a little bit your history, your background, and how your role, ended up being where you are there in North Carolina State University?
Yeah, sure. So I probably have the craziest pathway into this position from anybody that you probably have talked to yet. I actually started my bachelor's program here at NC State in zoology. So I graduated with a bachelor's in zoology with a minor in wildlife science. So I was really interested in possibly going to vet school and working on exotic animals. Throughout my studies, I kind of figured out that there are so many more pathways to working with animals than just going to vet school. So I decided to kind of pivot a little bit. So I decided to do my master's here at NC State in animal science and minored in nutrition. And while I was doing that, I actually was working for the Prestige Department of Poultry Science, taking care of all their lab animals in the building. So that allowed me to be able to help pay for my schooling while I was doing that master's program. When I finished up with that, I had taken some classes in the feed milling program and really got interested in the feed manufacturing side of things. So there was a position that opened, the area specialized agent for animal food safety, working in the regulatory space. So I decided to change jobs and work in that space while I was pursuing my PhD. And it's taken me about 7.5 years, but I finally defended my PhD dissertation last month.
Oh, wow. Congratulations on that.
So I'm a fresh PhD, but I've been working in this space for a very long time as well. So about that same amount of time, 7.5 years. And what I do is I help the industry comply with food safety regulations. Specifically, I was hired to help address the regulatory burden that was due to FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act. But since then, that's kind of expanded. So businesses are becoming more comfortable with complying with the preventive controls rule. Still get a few questions about sanitary transportation, and I'm still reviewing food safety plans pretty regularly and going out and looking at facilities and assessing their CGMP compliance. But the role has even pivoted a little bit more to include pet food safety and helping people who want to sell pet treats on the side or out of their home register and help them connect with our Department of Ag.
Evonik Animal Nutrition is committed to ensure food security and safety while reducing the ecological footprint of animal farming. Its products and services use evidence-based solutions that seek to promote animal welfare and reduce reliance on natural resources. All this is underpinned by long-standing industry partnerships and deep customer understanding. Evonik's focus on efficiency, sustainable, healthy nutrition, and collaborations with livestock farming partners creates value for customers and consumers.
And first of all, again, congratulations on your PhD. We could call you officially Dr. Marisa Cohen, and I will relate to you because I actually took my PhD is in agriculture and biological engineering, and I focus actually on grain storage, which is one of the areas that I work beside feed science.
Hmm.
But it also took me around that same time because I started doing a job like you. So here at Kansas State University, so that delayed me a little bit too. So I can relate to that a lot. So that's very important to combine that and get that work experience. And it takes a little bit longer, but it's
It
at the end
does.
of the day, I call it a marathon when you go get a PhD, and especially if you have a family, especially if you have a job, it's hard, and I could definitely relate to that. So again, congratulations.
Thank you.
And then for our audience, we always like to share that please subscribe to our channel, click on the bell to receive our notifications. And of course, if you have any questions, please leave a comment there. So going back to what you just mentioned, Marisa, is very important. Of course, food safety, especially now with pet food. And I relate to this also a lot because I joke, but it is true. My oldest son now he's turning 7 in a month, but when he was little, he used to eat the my dog's food, and my dog ate my son's food. They traded. So safety is very important, and that's something that we have to do that. But uh, taking the topic to relate it how women are now in the feed industry and the role they take, how do you perceive that role compared to the people that you relate to on that side from the pet food industry or the feed world? I mean, you mentioned you're always on a constant basis doing food safety plans for the commercial industry. So how do you see that? Do you see like your the people that you work increasing number of women? I mean, how their leadership role? If you could just share a little bit some of your experience with that, because I think the audience will be very interested, especially what's going on in the United States.
Yeah, so I can't give you a lot of statistics on the number of women in the workforce in the feed manufacturing industry, but based on my experience, I've definitely seen a growing number of women involved in the quality programs and in day-to-day mill management. I don't work with a ton of women who are managing feed mills, but they're definitely in those leadership roles. So that's been a really interesting change for me because when I first started in this role, I was seeing a lot of men. So it was, it almost gave me a little bit of, I guess, anxiety because I felt like I didn't really belong in the space. And as the culture's kind of changed, I've definitely found my niche.
Great. No, and that's something very important that you mentioned on the cultural change because I agree with you. I mean, I've been in the feed industry from the academic perspective here for almost 14, 13 years, and my back in Costa Rica, where I'm originally from, I work in the feed industry,
Hmm.
and when I was there 20 something years ago, we just saw all male, unless you were in on the administrative part, like in accounting or something else, IT or something like that. It was just very different. But now you see it. I mean, especially on the nutrition side. I mean,
Yes.
people that do the formulations and check quality. Uh, I do believe that now you start seeing more roles all around the world, and of course, it depends on the country. But on the operation side of things, managing a feed mill. Would you? What is your? I mean, I know you're closer to that southeast region, a big poultry and swine producing area, especially North Carolina. Do you see that besides that on the leadership on quality and safety? Do you see also an increased number on the management operations side, or still kind of a little bit that world not totally open?
On the direct mill management side, I definitely see it's still very much male dominated. But if you look outside just the mill manager and those supervisors roles, in the overall mill management, we do see a lot more women being involved in those processes.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. And I think as the culture change, I mean, you see, as you probably know, here at Department of Grain Science and Industry in K State, we do have a feed science 4-year degree program,
Yes.
and I'll probably will tell you, and I don't have the statistics to be accurate on that, but probably half our students are women,
Yeah.
and when we have also here a university feed mill, and of course, COVID kind of messed that up a little bit, but we used to have at least 15 students working at different times. And I'll probably tell you that at least um, 3/4 of them were actually women. Not all of them came from our department. Some came from animal science that also come and work here and take our courses. And that had us increase. And I think that will end up getting more women in those type of roles as throughout the different positions around the country and the world in essence. I think that there's still that shell needs to continue to be open and so thinking about yourself being in this industry, being said that, what do you think will be more the strategy to get more women into the industry? I mean, we all know that there's a deficit of people working in ag overall. So, what do you think will be that strategy to open that?
Well, first, I want to talk about something that you've already mentioned, and that's the change in the academic space. So, it's no secret around here either that we're seeing a lot more women choose ag majors. We can walk into a classroom and we're 50% or more women in those classrooms. So that's an interesting shift as well. But I think the strategy here is, the more people see women in these roles, the more women are going to be interested in these roles. So that for me, is, we were talking about this the other day with the change in veterinarians. So veterinarians used to be a male dominated industry, and we've seen a major shift in that where we don't see a lot of men going into the veterinary field anymore. There are still some, but it's very much female dominated. So I think that the same is true for ag. When we're seeing more women as professionals in these industries, it's going to encourage future generations.
That's a very very valid point. I also feel that having a specific role models it helps in this industry in the ag world, like you mentioned, poultry science, feed science. Uh, so let me ask you, a little bit a personal question. I mean, when you look back and how do you end up, and you shared that with us in your position, do you have any particular role models that you kind of like look up to, or not necessarily they have to be just women, but somebody that was very open to women, even on the male side, to get you where you are, and that might be still in the industry?
So my interest is really what drove my passion for this industry and in learning new things. But there have been several women who are in these roles, or in these types of roles. Cassie Jones at K State is one of them. She was very involved in the regulatory space and FSMA. So she's definitely one of them. But I've also had a lot of supportive male role models in this position. So our department extension leader, Dr. Jesse Grimes, has always been very supportive of my professional growth and development, as well as Adam Fahrenholz, my direct supervisor. So he's been really instrumental in helping guide me in developing this profession.
That's great to hear, and I know Adam and Cassie very well
Yep.
from our time here in K State, and that's great to hear. I mean, I think part of mentoring future generations is key to open. It doesn't matter they're male or female. The important thing is to guide them, because we do see a diminish in people interested in being in industry, at least here in the United States. Being said that always kind of curious how, in your position, do you have a specific, besides your role as on the agent side, to kind of help on the recruiting or mentoring students either at the undergrad level or at the grad level?
So I don't do a lot of that in my role. When I interact with students, I always try to put a positive light on what I'm doing and how it's impacting the industry. But from a recruitment side here at the department, we actually depend on Dr. Lynn Worley Davis, and she handles all matters of, she's the director of undergraduate programs, and she kind of directs the recruitment efforts as well.
That's good. Great to hear. And how is that enrollment in your department or overall, let's say in the ag world in North Carolina State University in terms of women joining the program?
We're definitely seeing more women joining the program. And numbers tend to fluctuate a little bit depending on the year and, how many students we have enrolled. So I can't really give you specific numbers because I'm not really involved in that process, but we have to strike a really good balance between the availability of classes that we have and having that student to teacher interaction and ratio and keeping that manageable.
This is great information. So, when we think about our audience, it's a worldwide audience. So, of course, we like to always tell our audience to give us a thumb up, especially when they're hearing this podcast and seeing us, because I think it's there's topics that we always like to share, and of course that always tells us that if somebody likes to have any specific topic covered, like not necessarily just related to feed science, technically speaking, but something like this, the role of women, please leave us a comment and let us know what you're thinking about. So, being said that, of course, Marisa, I appreciate all your comments. Also, when just thinking about the areas of that, what women roles are. I mean, you mentioned a little bit on the safety, quality, and then of course having that people that you mentioned are in the scientific world. How do you see the future of women overall in ag? I mean, I know this is a little bit more wide, but I always like to ask people and just overall their role, because the future, is, especially as we see COVID and how the supply chains with the war in Ukraine and other things have affected how we do business in the feed industry. From a woman's perspective and how that role, what do you see in the future of ag on the whole workspace? I'm just curious to know what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think COVID really put things into perspective for a lot of people, and that work-life balance. We started hearing more and more about that. There were struggles with childcare and being able to manage working from home while also being the primary caregiver, and that's for both men and women. I know several people that had to stay home with their children. Who weren't necessarily the women in the relationship. So that, I think that all kind of, like I said, put things into perspective. I'd love to see the role of women in ag growing. But I think we have to talk a little bit about the work-life balance aspect, because we're seeing more women moving out of the household and into professional roles while still trying to maintain, the family balance. And I'm relatively new to that.
No, and you touch a very important topic that we also want to cover in this podcast, which is the work-life balance. And from a woman's perspective, I mean, still, even that men take role to lead households on that area, of course, of taking care of the house, the family, is still not probably equal in a way. I mean, but it's going there. Tell us a little bit how's your situation? How do you handle it? Because not only in your house, but one of the things that I also would like to ask you is how sometimes we just focus too much in work and we forget about other things that it brings balance to our life, especially when you're doing a lot of stress, getting a lot of stress, doing a lot of stressful jobs. I mean, it's important to hear your perspective, especially from your role, and then of course the balance in your household.
Yeah, I have a bit of a unique situation here too. Within the last year, year and a couple of months, I had my first child. My husband got a new job where he was traveling a lot more than he ever has. I had a knee surgery and was trying to finish a PhD at the same time. So,
Wow.
so work-life balance became really important to me, and it became a matter of prioritizing everything, making sure that I am checking all the boxes for work that I can during the day, as well as writing as much as I can, maximizing my time with my son, because I'll never get these moments back with him. He's growing so fast and developing so quickly. So I want to make sure that I'm getting him off on the right foot while also maintaining myself and my professional life. So that's been a struggle. And like I said, it's been a lot of making sure that I prioritize, making a whole bunch of lists and checking them off bit by bit.
First of all, of course, congratulations on your son too. Of course,
Thank you.
It is very admirable what you just mentioned. I mean, knee surgery, husband traveling more, finishing your PhD, work, and taking care of your son. That's not an easy task.
No.
And I mean, I don't know how your rest of your immediate family, where are they, and the case specifically, but even if they're nearby, you're by yourself in your home. And I know that's very tough. I mean, I have two boys, and especially with my first boy, I had to do some traveling, and it was a little bit very difficult for my wife. I still do a lot of traveling, but
it's tough. Yeah,
it is difficult. In my particular case, I always like to share. I mean, I have I'm probably blessed that my parents are my dad's retired. My mom was always stay home. She helped with some things, but on my dad's business. But they live in Costa Rica, but it's easy for them to come here and help us when.
right.
So I tried to schedule a lot of long trips all together so they could come. Sometimes my mom just come by herself. Sometimes she brings my dad. But there's a joke that we say in the family that she doesn't want to take care of only two boys, not three. And of course, he's a different generation, and he's very helpful. But they didn't have to do that more than how males are doing it right now. So I understand, I admire, and of course, a thumbs up for you too on that too. So
Yeah, I've definitely learned to have to let go a little bit and depend on other people to help us out. And it's also been a lesson in communication too. I can't travel at the same time as my husband anymore. It's more than just getting a dog sitter or a cat sitter. It's now, balancing the whole family, and making sure that we consider that every time we book travel or anything like that. So like I said, it's been a lesson.
oh, I bet. And would you share what will be the? I mean, you mentioned some of them, but just three things that you do on your day to day to balance that. I mean, I know you mentioned communication is very good, but what are the three kind of points that you will add to that?
The calendar. I live by a calendar.
Very important.
Everything goes on my Google Calendar, under different accounts so that I can share things with work that has to be done, my personal life, our travel schedules, all of that. So it really boils down to that communication, whether it's, making sure that my mother-in-law can pick up from daycare one day, or my husband and I are splitting that duty as well. So, that those two things have been key. And the other part is just pushing through. Just get to the end of the day.
No, yeah, pushing through. I mean,
If we have to eat takeout one more night, whatever.
they always people say that as the kids grow, that it gets easier. I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, but I'm not discouraging you. But it just, at least on my experience, that was a little bit. There's different challenges, and I think some people probably would agree with that. But
Yeah, every phase of life is so different. You get past one thing, like we gave up bottles this week, and that's going to be amazing because I don't have to wash another bottle.
yeah.
But there's new challenges. Like he wants to be outside all the time, so I can't get things done in the house when I come home from work. But that's okay because it'll be there tomorrow.
Exactly. No, and like you said, at the end of the day, you have to take advantage and enjoy those times where they're right now, because they're really not coming back.
Yeah.
My kids are not that old. They're 6 and 4, going to 7 and 5 this summer. And as the faces, my even last night, my youngest one moved into our bed because he had an accident. I mean, he peed himself outside. Probably more than I should share in a podcast, but it's what it is. And then you just like, my wife sent him back to his room after we changed, and it's like, come on, we'll stay here in the middle. It just
So we can all get some sleep.
yeah, that's right. So I understand that, and as we said, I mean those roles are changing. I think that an equality in whatever that those roles means to a family should be there, and those roles always have to be defined. I mean, some people are better than others in some things, and in my case, we have specific things. But can you share a little bit how you do that balance with your husband? I mean, there's some things that are he probably does that you don't, and vice versa. And sometimes you do both.
Yeah, I have to commend my husband. He is not afraid of doing dishes or laundry or any of those household things. And of course, he still tends to take care of the outside chores, and he's Mr. Fix It. So he's always working on the cars or, fixing things inside the house. And, we also did a major renovation in our house over the last year. So he's taken on a lot of those roles as well, and I've helped where I can. So, but again, striking that balance, and of course it's never going to be 50-50 at any given time, but some days, I'm going to give as much as I can, and other days he's going to give as much as he can. So it's a balance. I'm not going to say there aren't arguments, because there are, but we really do work to strike a balance and appreciate the things that each one of us brings to the household.
That's great advice. We really appreciate what you're sharing with the audience. And of course, again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to leave a comment there or something you want to share. Because we're here with Dr. Marisa Cohen, from North Carolina State University. And we appreciate a lot of what she's bringing, because, we're talking about feed science and on her role. But of course, everything is related in terms of life,
Yes.
and having that balance is very important. So, going back a little bit on your role, kind of, I know that you mentioned that you do a lot of food safety plans and work a lot with the industry on the, of course, being an extension agent.
Mhm.
How do you see, not getting away to the topic that we're discussing, because I think it's very important, but also I want to bring back a little bit that technical aspect, because it is also important in quality, good manufacturing practices. Safety is something key in the feed industry. So how do you envision that this role, at least in the United States, is on the Food Safety Modernization Act, and how everything will evolve, and how do you see the workforce aligning with it from the women and the men perspective?
With FSMA, I think that took a while for people to really, understand and comply with, and we're starting to see more comfort there, which is awesome. But these inspections are still relatively new, so it's not unusual for folks to reach out after they've had an inspection and see what they can do better for the next one. So that's been kind of a working role of mine as well. As far as the workforce development, I see a lot of balance there too. I see both men and women working in this space, and I'm not sure if I see that changing, or maybe I've said before that I'd love to see more women in this space as well. But I think that we've got a nice balance right now. There are a couple more regulations they're coming down the pike, whether you're in pet food space or the livestock feed space. The PUR Act is something that we're kind of keeping our eye on right now, and that's the Pet Food Uniform Regulatory Act that would apply to dog and cat food. And I think that that's something that could potentially change how we do things at the state level. So just keeping an eye on that one right now.
That's very good information, and I'm pretty sure that our audience, a lot of them are the domestic or internationals, will have questions on that, especially that
Mm-hmm.
if that is coming. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in an evolving world in anything.
Oh, yes.
I mean, our feed industry, agriculture, and of course, how we balance our life into it. So, very, very important on that. So, probably, as we are finishing up this podcast, I just want to ask a little bit more a question that you might have. It's always curious, and you did said it, but what will be your take on why there's always more women in the veterinarian world now these days, or in the pet food world? Because we see it also here in our pet food program that we are here in K-State.
I can't speak to that personally, but my opinion is that we're seeing that shift because people are, when they take their pets to the vet, they see a woman veterinarian typically, and not always, but so that's something to strive for as a little girl, who's looking to work with animals, and I think that that companion animal space is very attractive. So I think that's why we've seen a little bit of that shift. Again, there might be some research out there that says otherwise. I haven't really looked into it, but I know that that was kind of the driving force for me. I wanted to be a veterinarian because I wanted to work with animals, and I saw, most of the time I saw women vets when I would take my animals in for their checkups and their exams. So that really resonated with me when we were talking about it a couple weeks ago.
From my perspective, we have a 7-year-old dog, and now that I think about it, all the veterinarians that we have gone through, I mean, the two places that have taken him, the majority are female now that I think about it, Ben.
Yeah.
And it does have a trend. I mean, some more into I'm not going to say end their career, but then some that are a little bit on the younger side, probably starting their career. But at least one of them, I mean, I also that the families involved in the feed industry, it's a leadership role. And you definitely see that. And we have seen that also a lot in our programs, of course, more women that do the pre-vet and then move into the veterinarian world here in Kansas State University. So that's always good. Diversity is very important. Equality is very important, and so that's something that we're always looking forward for it. So
it's time for our famous three.
As we wrap up this podcast, there's always a question that we always like to ask our participants, and this with your experience, but is there any specific favorite book related or resource that you think will be a good way to guide, especially the women, to bring that life balance or overall how to bring up their role in the specific industry, let's say in the ag world, or something that you have looked into it? I mean, or it could be a person too that you hear in a podcast or something like that.
Yeah, because I just finished my PhD a couple weeks ago, I have mainly been reading literature. So I don't have any specific recommendations, but I know that there are some programs out there that I've attended. The U.S. Poultry and Egg Women's Leadership Conference that's held every August in Destin, Florida. I found that to be really helpful, not only in striking that work-life balance, but understanding the role that women play in the workforce. And it's mainly geared towards poultry, but with it being held by U.S. Poultry and Egg, but the topics are fairly general. So I think that that's a really great program. We've had some professional development resources here at NC State and webinars that I've attended, to help new mothers and adjusting back to the workforce and how they can accommodate us here at the university level. So that's been really helpful as well.
Oh, perfect. No, that's great resources. And just tell me a little bit about that conference that you mentioned. Is that open registration for anybody, or is it by invitation? I mean, how can somebody from our audience attend that?
So the registration is on the U.S. Poultry and Egg website under their education events calendar. As far as I know, it's open to anybody.
Oh, wow. That sounds...
It's similar to the feed mill management seminar.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. So,
yep.
Well, no, this is great. I mean, I think that's very good information that our audience could do that. And then, of course, besides this, any favorite book that you have there outside of this topic, or agriculture, or poultry, or food safety?
I like to read novels. That's kind of where I like to spend my time. I like historical fiction as well. So, and I like to listen to podcasts. I think that, audiobooks and podcasts are kind of the way of the future, because I can kind of entertain myself on my 45-minute drive to work every day and my 45-minute drive back home. So I listen to all sorts of stuff. I really love true crime podcasts. That is kind of my bread and butter.
Oh, good. No, that's very interesting and a very good tip overall. I mean, my drive is very short, so I mean, I just hear the radio and the news when I come in the morning.
Yep.
and then I'm just hearing kids when I pick them up from school. So, but I appreciate it. And pretty much for our audience, please visit our site, wisenethics.com, and learn more about all of our podcasts besides this one, like poultry, swine, dairy, beef, and of course, pet food. We really appreciate that. So with this, Marisa, I really want to thank you very much for participating today in our podcast and for the second time and bringing this different topic. I mean, we're honoring here the International Women's Month that was this past March, but at the end of the day, every month should be also the Women's Month, and it's very important to bring that role back and balance as much as we can on life and also support our feed industry.
Thank you.
So, and this concludes another episode of the Feed Science Podcast presented by Wise Ethics. Thank you very much for joining us today. Don't forget, please, to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated for our future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback is very important and invaluable for us. Until next time, this is Carlos Campoabadal from the Feed Science Podcast signing off.
Thank you, and go Pack.